Modern-day slavery is no longer the business market it was many years ago. There are no more open slave markets, no wooden ships filled to the breaking point with innocent, abducted people, but numerous citizens in certain places of the world are being held against their will and forced to do unpaid labor for abusive masters. They are forced into a lifestyle where they are stripped of all of even their most elementary of rights, and caused pain and suffering from humiliating methods of torture for the most petty of misbehaviors. Though slavery may no longer be a part of our everyday lives, the same cannot be said of the unfortunate victims of this horrific infringement of freedom taking place in Sudan and other countries within Africa. This contemporary form of slavery currently plaguing Western Sudan is rooted in the civil war the country experienced 19 years ago. Opposing tribes are still fighting in rural areas, and some tribes, mainly the Rizaigatand and Messereria tribes, part of a group of tribes referred to as the Bagara, have continuously targeted an ethnic group called the Dinka and forced them to work as slaves. Since the 1980s, the Dinka people have been attempting to break free their enslaved comrades through a Dinka committee formed by the elders of the tribe and led by James Aguirre. Though this committee has freed hundreds of Dinka captives over the past few years, the effects of this self-help organization have been minimal due to a lack of steady finances and cooperation. The redemption, or buyback, of slaves is a common practice in contemporary slavery. This is when foreign identities trade with the Bagara captors in exchange for the freedom of the hostages. The transaction could include money, valuables, or livestock traded for the freedom of any number of slaves, usually bundled in a group with the identities paying a certain price per slave. The Convention on the Rights of the Child is an obligation for the Sudanese government to protect children from economic exploitation. Though the most common way for children in Sudan to be enslaved is to be captured by a rival tribe, another tragic circumstance is destitute parents actually selling their children to a life of labor. One example of the inhumanity of child slavery is of a girl who was captured at the age of 7 and forced by her masters to work 7 days a week in exchange for being beaten repetitively and forced to sleep on the dirt floor of her master's home. Eventually, in May 1994, this girl was finally bought in one of the numerous slave markets throughout southern Sudan by a Dinkan man in exchange for an AKM rifle and a cow. This was the price for her freedom. Slavery has been successfully driven out of most of the places on Earth, including America. What keeps the countries still suffering from it exempt from this right? With so much of the world no longer being influenced by the effects of slavery, it is hard to remember sometimes that it still exists in other parts of the world. The situation in Sudan is not the same as slavery many years ago because, like everything else, slavery has changed since then. Only when this is understood throughout the world can this issue be effectively acted upon and protested. This is what makes this video, and others like it, so important. Only through the education of privileged people around the world can this problem be fixed. The Sudanese government denies the existence of slavery, and many countries, including the United States, have strained relations with Sudan for assorted reasons. This is why the task is placed on us to spread the word and inform everyone we can of the brutalities of slavery and why these slaves are entitled to the right of freedom.